Everyone, and welcome to my first ever webinar. I hope it goes smoothly, but in case it doesn't, I'll blame it on my two kids who are climbing up the walls right now and who leave little bits of Lego everywhere, as you can see in this photo. Actually, that was my husband, not my kids. I'm really amazed with the interest that this topic has generated. At Gumdocs, we have always tried to give back to our community with continuing education courses. I don't think anyone cares right now about my incision design for implant placement. So I thought I would talk about something a little bit more relevant to me and hopefully to all of you, and that's how to educate our kids at home during this time. Now, I'm not a teacher. I have no formal education, training in education. So I've asked for help from two educators close to my heart. Now, you'll notice here that our pictures on the side overlap a little bit with the text. You can actually just move them over by clicking on them. I'll introduce my aunt, Alison McGuire, who is the current education officer and private school inspector for the Ontario Ministry of Education. She's also a retired superintendent of education with the Dufferin Peel Catholic School Board in Mississauga. And she's been working remotely from Oakville. Say hello, Elizabeth.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth McGuire, and I look forward to being part of this panel and answering any questions that people may have. Thank you.
Next, I'll present my sister. Hold on. Emily McGuire, who is a primary school teacher here at Turnbull School in Ottawa. She has not missed a day of work during the pandemic and has been busy teaching her students their curriculum via a Zoom classroom. Say hello, Emily.
Hi everyone, I'm Emily McGuire. I look forward to chatting with you later.
And lastly, me, the black sheep in the family who did not go into education, as you can see. And I'm not coming to you today as a periodontist, but rather as a mom who has been thrust into the role of an educator with very little notice. And I'd like to share some of my reflections and ideas on how to educate my kids during this time. So I have a few housekeeping announcements to start with. You'll notice my sister's dog here on the screen. I understand that there is some frustration over the delay in the public school system implementing an e-learning platform. I would encourage your questions and comments to be constructive. The spirit of this webinar is to be positive and share good ideas. And Emily and Elizabeth are not representing their organizations in any official capacity. They are donating their time to provide some context for the discussion. Normally when I give a talk, I like to encourage participation, and I don't think that would work with this format, so I would ask that you listen to me present a few slides. We'll hear some comments from our panelists, and then I'll open the floor to some questions. I won't be able to hear you since you've entered into the meeting automatically muted and your video is disabled, so I won't know if you didn't brush your hair. But if you have a question, I would ask that you raise your hand digitally, and you can do so by clicking right here on participants, and then click the raise your hand function. Another way to ask a question is to click on the Q&A button here at the bottom of the screen, and you can type in your question. I've asked our continuing education liaison, Sean Corcoran, who you'll see here on that screen, to serve as a moderator and keep track of the raised hands and questions so that it's not chaos when we get to that part of the talk or the webinar. I know a lot of you personally, but for those of you who do not know me, I like to stay busy. So for the first few days of quarantine, I kept myself busy by removing my daughter's teeth. So you can see that she is proudly displaying her 5-1 that she and I removed. For the dentists in the group, you'll notice a slightly odd exfoliation pattern there. She lost her 6'3" when she was 2. Because of a trauma, so that means I'll be staring at a gap in her smile until she's 12, which is awesome. Over the next few days, she lost a few more teeth, and we decided to take some funny pictures. This one being a PSA announcement to encourage wearing a cage while playing hockey. I then went on to my son, and I cut his hair, as you can see here. So this is a lateral angle, and then a straight on shot, and I'll be taking appointments once this quarantine is over, although this is really the only haircut I can do. And when I ran out of body parts to remove, I started to think more about my kids' education. Provinces across Canada have been responding to the escalating pandemic with school closures, some extending to the end of the school year. In Ontario, school closure information has been provided over time with some uncertainty over the return to school date. And as of May 31st of this year, there was still the question as to whether or not the school year would be extended into the summer, which has not yet been answered. The second phase of Learn at Home mandate was released by our Minister of Education on March 31st and includes a new set of expectations for the educators, including the number of hours recommended per day of teacher-led learning. Up until this week, up until this week in the public system, this would have been organized and implemented by parents. It is my understanding that the public board is implementing an e-curriculum that is rolling out this week. And I will say that from a parent's point of view, this has required an absolute ton of organization, resources, and the fact that I'm not working with patients right now, I have that time, but not everybody does. There are lots of available resources in our community and online. I'll take a moment now to tell you that we do not use all of these in our house. We use a couple. These are just sort of an accumulation of the ones that my friends and I use. I'll start with Kumon, which is one that I know well since my daughter does it. We started it last year when she started to fall behind in math. So it offers a program for math and English literacy. The way it works is that you go into the center. Now this is during pre-pandemic times. Go into the center to be assessed. At that point, you're sort of put at a level and given booklets to cover each subsequent day. And it included 2 in-class sessions a week, which took anywhere between 20 and 60 minutes sometimes. And they would progress through the material rather slowly to make sure that concepts are really well understood before moving on to a new skill. So you can see that, you know, this is early April, this is a few days ago, we were working on sequences and addition, and we'll be moving on to subtraction soon. Now, Kumon's obviously not providing in-class instruction at the moment. We were given the books to last through the end of April. I correct them. It is still possible to join Kumon at the moment. At least our center and a number of other centers in the city are accepting enrollment. They'll do their placements online or through a Zoom classroom. And you can pick up the books remotely. So that's my plug for Kumon. They're not paying me to say all that. This is just what we use in our household, and we found it to be really helpful. There are other programs like IXL, which is a favorite amongst my friends. We don't use it yet, just because we sort of have a limit as to what we can do in a day. But from what I understand, it's a relatively low cost to join, roughly $20 per month for one child, and slightly more with each additional child, and follows the school curriculum. You would get an email even just to summarize the information that was covered by your child throughout the week, so the number of hours, the questions answered, and the skills practiced. There are other materials such as the Jump Math books that my sister alerted me to, and they are available from kindergarten through grade 8. This is the grade 2 math book version 1. There's 2 books per year. We have, again, not done this yet ourselves, but it's a resource that's available out there, and I understand it's a teacher's favorite. The next resource that's available to everyone are the Education Quality and Accountability Office standardized tests that are provided for grades 3, 6, 9, and 10. They have the last 5 years worth of exams online for math and reading comprehension. And again, doesn't apply to my family. We don't have kids in this age range, but it would apply to those that have kids that fall into that group. And I understand these are excellent. This is sort of what it looks like once you print it off. And of course, this relies on people having access to computers, the internet, a printer, et cetera, which I know not everyone does. In speaking with my friends, most agree that the day flows a lot better with some type of a schedule. So here's a schedule I made for my daughter on the first Thursday of the pandemic. You'll see that she generally chooses the non-academic tasks first, with the exception of Kumon, which she did here at the beginning of the day. But she did some coloring. We played mousetrap with her younger brother. That particular day, we marked our heights on the basement wall, and it turns out I've grown 2 centimeters since last year. I haven't actually. We played outside for 30 minutes. But we love having this sort of goal-oriented checklist that she can go through throughout the day. You know, and I try to be not so strict about it. I try to be as flexible as I can be. You'll see that there's some time attributed to each of the tasks arbitrarily. I just sort of picked a time that I thought she would manage. And we actually asked Siri or Alexa to time us because she listens better to Alexa than she listens to me. That's really the bottom line. And it works out that way, and we'll get through the task that way. This is an example of a schedule that my friend Isabel uses with her 2 kids that are a bit older, so grade 6 and 8. You can see that the time designated to the tasks is longer, that there are more subjects here to cover throughout the day. So it really has to be tailored to the age of your child and their ability to get through a certain task. And also, she's smarter than me since she printed them off and doesn't have to handwrite them out every single day. The next schedule I'll show you here is for my friend Heather, who has 4 young kids between the ages of 3 and 10. And so an added challenge of being able to cover material for an age range like that. And it works out well for her family. In fact, I think her 10-year-old daughter helps out quite a lot with the teaching with the younger kids. We tried to make this learn at home exciting for our daughter. We went online and we purchased binders, we purchased pencils, erasers, all the stuff that the school would typically provide to her, so that she'd be excited about it. And in fact, the first night she slept with all of this stuff. We found it in her bed at night that she had her school supplies with her, which I thought was really cute. And I guess something that I would have done when I was her age too. You'll notice that she did some artistic drawings here on the front of her math and art book, and the Pumoji made it into both. And I understand that that's a popular thing amongst grade 2s. You'll also notice that all of the schedules include some outside time and physical activity time, which is really important. I've learned the hard way that a 7-year-old can't sit down to work for 2 hours straight like I can. It really turns her into a monster. So we set timers to mimic the school day and provide natural breaks for recess and subject changes during the day. I've also learned that there are many hours in the day and that we try to fill those hours with as much as possible that's just not a screen. And I know we're not going to completely get away from screens, but I think things like Meccano and Lego and puzzles are still educational, even though they're sort of deemed toys. They help with, as you all know, dexterity, 3D spatial sort of skills, which are important for dentistry as well as other professions. This is obviously my son James did not build this Meccano robot. I did, but he likes to pretend that he's tightening the bolts and helping. Here's an example of a slightly more complicated Meccano geared more towards 10 to 12, 13-year-olds. Again, really great for dexterity. I had some trouble with certain aspects of this myself, and this is sort of how I'm keeping up with my implant skills during this quarantine. At this point, one more slide. Lego, we're a big fan of Lego. As you can see, we pulled out the Harry Potter Hogwarts castle after dinner one night and played with that with a glass of wine. And we play a lot of board games. So I ordered a lot of the stuff online since the pandemic has happened. And games like, again, Sorry is a great game for our daughter's age. Our son cannot really contribute much except that he'll move the pawns all over the board. And I was actually yellow for this game. So if anyone remembers how to play this, I was doing very badly since everyone else already had some of theirs in the home. So at this point, I'm going to ask Elizabeth and Emily to make some comments about how their jobs have changed since the pandemic, and then we'll move on to the question period. So Elizabeth, I'll have you go first.
Okay, thanks, Alison. I'll just give some background on my work in education during COVID-19 and the closures of schools. I'm a private school inspector for secondary schools in the province. Private schools are considered private businesses, and the role of the ministry is to ensure credit integrity and ensure diploma requirements are being met at these schools. Regular inspections take place at our private secondary schools. When the announcement came on March 12th that public schools would be closed after March break, that was under the authority of the Minister of Education, and private schools were not actually included in that order. It was only through the direction of the Public Health Department, and when businesses were told to close, that included private schools, and they were to close as of March 24th. As a background, there are already a large number of fully online private secondary schools that exist in the province and are monitored by the ministry. So they're continuing to operate as they normally would do so. Most private secondary schools that were on-site schools have moved to an online method of delivery, and they're at various stages of implementation. So students in most private secondary schools across the province have continued on with their learning. For parents that may have children in grade 12 and are graduating, one of the things that came out during this closure, those students in grade 12 will not be required to complete the literacy requirement or the total full community involvement requirement. A priority in the province will be placed on students scheduled to graduate this year, and any student on track to graduate will be supported to do so. So in my role, I'm continuing to inspect private schools, although they're closed, through virtual inspections. I'm looking to ensure that there's credit integrity and diploma requirements are being met. And I'm also supporting private schools in this transition period. Although I'm not working in a publicly funded education system currently, I'm familiar with the implementation plan that is going on in the province. And Alison did comment on that in her slide, so I won't repeat that. But as you know, as of April 6th, schools were required to contact their students and begin online learning in a variety of online platforms supported by individual boards, and engage in online learning with the allotted timeframes outlined by the Ministry of Education. And again, Alison had a slide where she referred to that. These online activities are being monitored by principals at the local school level. So I would encourage you to stay in contact with your child's teacher through the online learning and the principal if you have any questions or concerns. Students in both elementary and secondary schools will receive final report cards at the end of this year. Those report cards will be based mostly on the work that students did up to March 13th, and they will include in elementary some summative comments from the work that the children have done online, and in secondary, students will be completing assignments to work towards their final grade. So I hope this general summary outlines for you how students are being educated in this province, both at private secondary schools and public schools during this time. At the end of the presentation, I'd be pleased to answer any general questions about supporting your children with online learning activities. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Elizabeth. And Emily, do you have any comments?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Emily. I am a grade 6 teacher at Turnbull School, which is a private school here in Ottawa. As a school, we've been really lucky to be able to hit the ground running with our distant learning plan immediately after March break. We've been busy working to adapt and implement an e-curriculum for our students. As teachers, students, and parents, we've all had a pretty intense crash course in different technologies over the last 3 weeks. I would describe the process as dynamic because we've made some changes to our big program. We've also made some small adjustments to our lesson plans. And we've been learning as we go and getting feedback from our parents and students about what's working and what's not. So each day I teach lessons to my homeroom with Zoom, much like we're doing right now. They have 2 scheduled classes a day for about 25 minutes. And then they're assigned work either to complete online or to print off. So even if it's only through video, we do get the opportunity to see our students every day, which has been really wonderful because we miss seeing them and they miss seeing each other. Of course, it's taken some getting used to, but my students have been enthusiastic and engaged, and I've been so impressed with how well they've adapted. And now I'm happy to say that they have pretty exceptional online meeting etiquette, although it did take some work. And in the beginning, we were very happy to have that mute button handy. The isolation has been really difficult for everyone. It's resulted in such a dramatic change in routine. I feel we have been successful in getting some of that routine back to our students. And while it's been really important for us to figure out the most effective ways to deliver the curriculum to them, it's also been equally as important for us to help them feel connected by replicating our classrooms and school communities to the best of our ability. Our principals even do daily video announcements, which has been really nice. And I feel that this sense of normalcy and continuity has been hugely important for them, and not just giving them some structure and routine, but also providing them with comfort during this difficult time. I'm really happy to be here with you today, and hopefully I can also answer some questions for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. That was great. So I'll now open the floor to questions. If you have a question, please direct it to a specific panel member so we know sort of who could share knowledge best for you. So Sean, if at this point, if you could go through and organize the questions.
Mm-hmm. So we have the first question. It's to all the panelists. What do you use for French? Are there any websites or books? And this specific person has a son in grade 1.
So I'll answer that question. So my daughter's actually in a French school. What we've been using is a French grade 2 book, which I can run and get if you'd like. And that's a workbook that was purchased at Christmas time by my mother-in-law just to have handy, and it's worked out really well. Maybe Sean, just give me a sec, I'll go get it.
Sure.
If you want to move on to the next question.
But I could answer part of that too.
Yeah.
Sean?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so one of the things that maybe I was going to speak about for the public schools, they've given a focus of what subjects will be done in the online learning. So for instance, in kindergarten to grade 3, there's a focus on literacy and math. In grades 4 to 6, it's literacy, math, science, and social studies. 7 and 8, it's math, literacy, science, and social studies. And then we have the high school. So because it's a limited number of hours, not all subjects could be covered. So my understanding from the ministry directive to school boards, public school boards, would be that probably French is not going to be covered.
For our school.
So Elizabeth, you're probably speaking from the point of view of an English school board then.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. So the opposite would be true for the French school board.
Right. But the opposite may be true, but they would be still focusing on, it wouldn't be the opposite. I would say they would still be focusing on literacy, math, and science, depending on the grade level, but it would be in French.
Right. Emily, were you going to say something?
Yeah, sorry. So for our school, we've been having their French teachers hold Zoom sessions with them. So they've been able to continue on. As I'm not a French teacher, I can't speak to the resources that they've been using, but we've continued on with our French program.
So we actually had a comment from one of our other doctors, Dr. Isabel Kenville, and she mentioned that Duolingo is a great French application. And so that can be used to help teach, I think, any language actually for Duolingo.
And I know that our French teachers do use that.
Great. I'm just getting a text from Dr. Turnbull to talk about Duolingo. So thank you, Dr. Turnbull. So the next question.
Next question comes from Heather. So she has teenagers 13 and 15, and motivating the 13-year-old seems to be a challenge. Is there any assistance with motivation that you can provide?
So from my understanding, with friends of mine that have kids at that age, I think, going back to what I said earlier about setting a schedule and ticking off boxes as the day goes on, and using rewards to be able to compensate or provide positive feedback for them completing those tasks. Again, that IXL program that I showed, and I'd be happy to share some of these slides in case I went through them a bit quickly. In that program provides tasks that are sort of, you can check them off as you go as well, and getting that weekly feedback as to how many of those you completed could be motivating. But I'm not a child psychologist. I find it very hard to motivate my daughter most days. She's not the easiest kid to educate, and when we all have to use our own sort of personalized approach with our kids and do what works best.
I would say that to offer up some hope from that, as the boards start rolling out these programs, just having their teacher available and having assignments coming from them and from the school, from the feedback from our parents, that has been very motivating. So hopefully as they start to get assignments more directed from their teachers, it should be easier to get them to work on them.
Right, and I would comment too, I know in the public boards, especially at grades 6, 7, and 8, they are using Google Classroom, and just as Emily has said, then there's a direct connection with their teachers. And although there's a variety of ways we can motivate students, and we want to, their mental health is really important during this time of isolation. But again, as I said earlier in my remarks, students will be getting report cards at the end of the year. And so, we want our students to take this seriously. And we certainly don't want to put additional stress on the students, but I think connection with their teachers, Emily's doing in her classroom, but that is going to be rolled out, and it should have been rolled out this week in the public boards, where it's not just going online and doing an activity in isolation, it's connection with your teacher.
We also got one comment during that saying that for the kids that are 13 and 15, they use Khan Academy, and the badge reward system that Khan Academy has is a good motivator for the 13-year-old. I'm not sure if any of the panelists have any comment on Khan Academy or experience with that. But
We've used it a little bit over the last 2 weeks of our program, and it's been great so far. So that's another good resource.
I'm getting texts from my friends that are also watching this webinar to answer the questions that I can't answer. And here's a text regarding some resources that are available for a French curriculum. So this is Net Math, and I can send that again along to whoever needs that. If Sean, you want to jot down the name of that first question.
Sure.
So do you have another, can you?
Yeah. Yep. Okay. The next question is to Dr. McGuire. It's from Haley, one of our staff members at Gumdocs. And she says, what types of activities are you doing with James to keep him both busy and learning?
So you'll see here, I'm just going to tip my screen down to the floor right beside me. So that's what we spend a lot of our time doing with James. But James loves puzzles. He loves Lego. You know, I'll build him a dinosaur. He'll then chew my arm off for an hour. He likes to play with Paw Patrol. Really, I've had to spend a fair bit of money on, and I'm, you know, very aware of how much this is costing for a lot of people educating their kids at home. And in fact, I think the government's offering some money back to help offset some of the costs with learning at home. And again, we can get into kind of another subject, but it is available, and I can reach out to individuals with that knowledge if it's helpful. But yeah, Lego, Meccano, puzzles, coloring. I'll print off something off of the internet, something of interest, like a Paw Patrol character. He'll then color it. I have to say the biggest challenge in my day is the ages of my kids and trying to keep them both entertained at the same time. It's not easy. So I don't know if that's helpful, Haley. And Haley, you and I can speak together a little bit more, you know, via text or phone call later if you'd like. Great.
Okay, we don't have any more questions right now. If anyone has one, feel free to raise your hand or type it in. We just got one comment that I'm pulling up from Heather. It says, for motivating older kids, you can put in blocks of time and it helps them sort out their day and get to each goal. And it says to put in blocks of time for older kids to amuse younger kids. So if you have older siblings, you can use the older kids' skills to help out with the younger kids.
I'm also getting a text from another friend that uses candy to motivate her kids. Anyway, it's a joke amongst dentists. You know, stickers. We have a sticker wall for our son. That was more for potty training, but that worked well. But it's tough, you know, and ultimately up to grade 1, it's play-based. Specific curriculum. Emily, is that your dog? Great. Sean, are there any other questions?
Yeah, we do have another one. We have a question from Dr. Major. It's any recommendations for encouraging a 3-year-old towards independent play?
Oh, man. So my son plays independently. We joke that we ignored him when he was a baby. My daughter required that I be beside her the whole time. I don't know that, I think that's a bit of an innate thing with kids. And again, I'm not a child psychologist. That's just my own personal experience. That's a tough one if they want you to be beside you all the time. I'm also getting a text here from my husband who's watching from somewhere else in the house here that regarding the question about the French resources, that the board did release a list of resources that early on that you can check online as well. So I see there's another question there, Sean.
Yeah, there is. It's more of a comment. For slightly older kids, it says we're having them learn to cook meals as we speak. As we speak, my mother is having a baking session through FaceTime with my daughter. So cooking, baking lessons are another thing that you can use with older kids.
And that's something that, as I mentioned earlier, our principals have been rolling out morning announcements. One of the mornings, they have a place out in the country. He talked about tapping his maple trees. Another principal talked about building a bird feeder. So we've really been encouraging them to learn new things, following along with our curriculum and what we're doing as well, but trying to give some creative suggestions about how to fill their time by, I've taken up knitting. So just little things like that that we've really been trying to encourage them to do.
Right, and the gardening's about to start too, so that could be a useful thing to do outside as well. So Sean, I see that there are a few more questions.
Yeah, another comment actually. So Positive Parenting Solutions has very good tips for all ages for motivating kids with everything. So Positive Parenting Solutions is another website or resource that could be used.
Perfect. Sean, are we jotting these answers down so we can give everyone a little summary maybe?
We are.
Thank you, Sean. And then another question?
I don't see any more questions right now. If anyone has one, feel free.
Okay. Oh, there's a question.
There we go. Another comment for older kids. Skillshare.com has some great classes for the older kids. Things like photography, hand lettering, and things like that. So again, different skills that can be used that wouldn't necessarily be taught in school.
I'm seeing another question from Dr. Kenville. If anyone would be willing to send Sean a reply to the email that included this invitation for the webinar, just with whatever their answers were, so we could pool our resources together. That would be great, and I can send him a handout as well of my slides that you can use as well. Great.
Okay, we have another question here. Oh, again, more of a comment. We have a friend that used their family members, so siblings and parents, who were willing to teach certain subjects to their kids over video conference. This strategy may work for some folks. So I guess if you have family members that are stronger in certain subjects, you can make it more of a family gathering rather than just teaching.
Yeah, that was actually my husband texting from somewhere else in my house. But you know, I will go. I'll say again what Elizabeth said earlier about the boards rolling out more material this week. We've actually been a little bit overwhelmed with what has arrived from the board this week, and very impressed with what they've provided, you know, as of Monday, and quite a lot to get through for the rest of the year. Whether or not it will be graded, and I'm not sure that I'll even tell our daughter if it will be graded or not, and still require her to do it. But they have mobilized rather quickly. And we're able to provide information within a relatively short time frame. Would you agree, Elizabeth?
Yes, I would agree. And again, I know parents may have wanted it earlier, but you know, teachers were told when everybody else was told on the 13th that school was going to be closed for 2 weeks. They had their March break. So the week before this week, they were in preparations with their principals. They were in a lot of virtual meetings getting ready they had to find out in school boards what level of implementation teachers were comfortable with, what online resources they had. So school boards, you know, I will say, have worked really hard previous to April 6th to get up and running. And when I've talked to principals that I'm familiar with, they are pleased with the job that their teachers are doing. And as I listen to some of the comments and the many great suggestions, I go back to, you know, again, we're all concerned about everybody's mental health, and we wouldn't want to put too much pressure on children. I think the school boards have come up with a plan now. They've set the hours of recommendation for education for the students with a focus on certain subjects. So I think, you know, we need to be mindful of that and not overburden our children. And then I really like a lot of the suggestions. Do fun things like cooking and all those things that maybe you haven't had time to do with your children. But again, I'm you know, as someone who worked in public education, I am pleased with what the school boards have come up with.
Great. Thanks, Elizabeth. Are there any other questions, Sean?
No, not right now.
So what we'll do is we'll wrap up in a minute or two. Sean's going to be issuing some continuing education certificates for whoever requires one, and you'll know who you are. You would have registered through GovDocs to receive that for a Core 3 credit, I believe. Mm-hmm. Sean?
Yeah,
correct. I don't think we can issue core 2 for a
No,
webinar.
not for this.
And I really appreciate everyone joining us today. I hope you found it useful. Like I said earlier, I know most of you personally. Feel free to reach out to me anytime. You probably all have my cell phone number. You probably all have my email address. I'm around and happy to share any insight. And I have direct access to my lovely family members. And if anyone accuses me of any nepotism here, then I'd 100% be guilty. But I'm lucky to have them here and amongst my family. We have one other question. Oh no, it's just a thank you. Thank you, Dr. Krishan. And is there another question there?
Oh, they're both thank yous. All thank
Okay,
yous.
great. Well, I'm glad it sounds like people enjoyed the session. Like I've said, I can always pass questions off to Emily and Elizabeth at any point if someone wants to direct a question to me, and just send me a text anytime. Great. Okay, so Sean, I guess we'll sign off.
Yep. And thank you everyone for signing up.
Bye.
Bye. Take care.